have you ever personally done anything harder than a relationship? Because you and your husband, like me and my wife, you guys got together young, right?
Yes, we've been together since I was 14.
14. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. We're 20. I was 20. She was 17. And even that was tough because you change so much and you go through so many things. I mean, like school is hard, work is hard. There's a lot of things in life that are hard. But maintaining a connection with somebody as you change that much and you go through these different types of conflict, I don't think there's anything tougher than that. Like throw two humans who are different backgrounds, different belief systems.
Have different ways of looking at life, have different desires for life.
Throw them in a box together for like 60 years and say, there you go, guys. Figure it out.
And be happy, right?
And being happy is kind of the key part because relationship, I mean, longevity, I think is not a good metric at all.
No, not at all.
You can be in a failed relationship and still be in a relationship.
Yes.
That doesn't mean that you're successful. So the common things that we see are people who they'll call us up and say, you know, we're arguing a lot, right? We have communication issues. We can't seem to.
He doesn't understand. She doesn't understand.
Right. Or, you know, when it's good, you hear this a lot too.
When it's good, when we're good, we're great. And when we're bad,
it's
we're
intolerable.
awful.
It's awful. So they talk a lot about, we'll get into things and we'll fight. And then we don't really resolve it. We just kind of stop talking about it. And then
we have the same fight over and over again.
Pick up back where we left off in terms of, you know, somebody will say, oh, did you pick up the kids today? And then the tension is broken. You're back into the rhythm until the next blowout happens. Yeah. But every time there's a little bit more distance, right? Every time you get a little bit further apart.
I think there's even more distance between them, right? But the fights cannot be, they're very, very close together, right? I can have the same fight maybe 3 times in one day or every day for a week or every month, right?
And you have complaints like, I try to talk to my partner, but he or she just shuts down on me.
Yeah. Doesn't want to talk. Or the other way around, the other partner is saying, my partner never stops fighting with me. Nothing I do is good enough. I can never satisfy them. It's always... Nothing makes her or him happy.
Right. And you have one person who's kind of going, well, let's just be content with what we have. Why are you always nitpicking at me? Why are you always trying to parent me? And the other person's going, well, I don't want to be your parent. I feel like I have to parent you.
Because you're not listening.
Right. You don't listen to me and I have to follow up with you. It's the classic, you know, the person who's the life of the party and would give you the shirt off his back kind of thing, but can't get home when he says he's going to be home. Just one drink. And then it ends up, you know, being 2, 3, 4 in the morning. And one person's kind of text bombing the other or chasing them around the house because they're trying to walk away. And if any of these things resonate with you, you're probably going through attachment conflict, right? Are there any other common things that you can think of?
I just feel like when I hear couples explain their conflict to me, it's always kind of that they feel the same thing, but they're in opposite directions.
What do you mean? Can you give context?
So, for example, I perceive that he doesn't love me because he won't listen to me. And I'm trying to explain myself, but he's just not getting it. I have to teach him how I feel. I have to teach him to love me. And then you turn around and ask him what it's like to hear her. And then he'll say, well, I just think that I'm never enough, that this is never going to be enough for her. So really, she doesn't love me because I'm not enough. So it's this very profound sense of not being loved, which is kind of perpetuating the conflict.
Right, from both sides. And like you're saying, one side is saying, I'm not loved, and this is clear to me because my partner is constantly criticizing me. And the other side is saying, I'm not loved, and this is clear to me because my partner doesn't listen to me.
Yes, doesn't understand me.
So if any of that sounds familiar or resonates to you, stay tuned because we're going to talk all about it.
You're listening to What Brings You In, a weekly series featuring psychology talk with therapists Ryan and Carey. Have something to say? Want your question answered? Visit ryananswers.com/podcast to get in touch.
So the first major relationship we all have is with our parents. And it wasn't really until the 70s that the full impact and importance of that was realized. There was a researcher called Mary Ainsworth who did an experiment that showed there are 2 basic styles or ways that people bond: secure and insecure.
Yes. And what it was called was a stranger situation. And what Mary Ainsworth did was she'd remove a baby. I don't know if I've told you that I've done this with all my children just to see how it works. And you can see it clearly.
I wanted to do it. I don't know if my wife would be as open to it.
as open as
You're not doing your weird
was.
Experiments on our kids,
but,
Ryan.
Okay, so no one gets hurt. So what happens is that a baby is placed in a strange situation. Strange meaning unknown,
like stressful
in the sense that it's not something he recognizes or she recognizes. So the baby goes inside, there are toys in the room, and the mom's inside with the baby for a little bit, and then the mom leaves, leaving the baby with a stranger in this strange room.
Which to a baby is a pretty big deal.
Yeah, it's terrifying, right? My mom's not here. I'm not safe. So the baby will definitely cry. And this is seen in both secure attachment and insecure attachment. They'll cry. The big difference is when mom comes back. So when mom comes back, some babies will calm down very quickly. As soon as they see mom, as soon as mom carries them, as soon as mom talks to them, they'll calm down.
That's secure attachment,
That is
right?
secure attachment, right? They feel that they are safe and they feel loved and their mom's there for them.
Right.
The insecure babies, there's two types, right? The big difference is that mom comes into the room and this baby doesn't calm down. So there's two ways that they don't calm down. One of them will keep crying even though mom is trying to calm them down. So mom will carry them and they'll keep crying. Mom will kiss them and they'll keep crying and they'll keep crying. And the other babies, when mom comes into the room, will either just not care that mom's there, so they won't even recognize that mom's there. They won't even look at mom.
You're not a big deal. I don't need you.
Mom, I don't need you. Maybe they didn't even cry very much when mom left. They could be crying when mom's there, but they just don't see her as a safe place to go and get healing and be safe again.
Right. So the key thing there is mom represents to an infant, your primary caregiver in this case. In most cases, your mom will be a kind of a safe haven or a safe harbor where if you're feeling scared or upset or anxious, their presence can calm you and provide you with safety.
It's proof that there's someone there with you, right? So this sense of I'm not in the world alone. I have someone to hold my back, to hold my hand when life gets hard, right? So the baby is in a very hard situation. And when mom comes, he feels relieved because now the weight of this terrible situation with this weird person in this weird room is better that she's here.
Yeah. And so this has been shown to carry into adult life. Yes. So just to give context, we're talking about infants from 8 to about 20 months of age.
Yes.
Like we're talking very young.
Baby.
Bonding style, this attachment style forms and determines whether you're secure or insecure.
I also want to say that not because if a baby has insecure attachment, he will have insecure attachment in his life. There is ways we can make people feel better and feel more secure. But it definitely gives like the blueprint, the map of how relationships work, right?
Yeah, and this attachment style is linked to a fight or flight response. Like our brains are hardwired because we're humans and because bonding is so important to us. It's essential for our survival. Right? Yeah, we're born into a relationship. And we keep our relationships with our parents longer than any other animal. Yes. So they're really important to us. And if there's danger within relationships, your caregiver may not be there for you. That's very anxiety inducing. Oh, yeah. It triggers am I safe?
We're so dependent, right? What can a baby do? A baby dies without someone to take care of them. That's how dependent we are.
So you have this mechanism in your brain and it doesn't really shut off. It doesn't go as an adult, oh, well, I'm an adult and we're not in the jungle anymore. We're in modern society. I'm safe. There are people and ways I can be supported. It stays with you. And so when you have these attachment insecurities triggered, feeling like people aren't there for you in a fight or an argument, or somebody who maybe doesn't listen to you and that sets you off, you get that fight or flight response. And usually you'll have that one side, the preoccupied side we mentioned, will be more fight. They want to come closer and are often emotionally aggressive. And you have the other side, the avoidant side we mentioned, who I don't care. I don't need you. Right. They're the flight. Like, I just want to get away from this. I don't need this. I'm okay stupid. On my own.
Yeah.
I don't know about you, Carey, but when I first learned about this, it was second or third year of university, and it was just a passing chapter. It was like a little section that was like, some infants bond different than others.
And generally like in developmental psych, right? Where we only learn about it.
Yes, that was the class. And I was like, well, great, more crap for me to memorize. I just want to learn how to be a good therapist. Like, why do I have to know about this? And so I was in Edmonton at the time in Western Canada, and I was taking the train home, and I was going to see a couple clients later that day. And I did house calls then. So I was at this client's home, and me and him were sitting there, and his wife was running a little bit late. And so she walks in, and we went from having a really calm kind of natural conversation to he got so tense. He kind of fired up right away. And I was like, that's weird. It's kind of like that avoidant baby that I just saw. There's a stress in the relationship of, oh, the partner I'm arguing with and that I'm here to have therapy with is back. Oh no. And so that stress was triggered. And I was like, well, that's pretty weird. I figured that was just with parents. And then she comes in, sees him, and there is a pile of dishes in the sink, and she walks into their kitchen. And so she starts doing the dishes, and she's shooting them these death glares as she's doing this. And I'm like, holy shit, man, this is
I gotta go.
right. Man, I don't know about this. Am I cut out? Am I in the right field here? And then she started kind of escalating. She started jabbing, being like, oh, you couldn't do this? And I knew what she was asking is, why don't you care about me?
Why don't you take care of me?
Why don't you care about me enough to do this? And the more she escalated, the more he was shutting down. And all of a sudden, this hit me like a ton of bricks of, holy shit, this is the attachment stuff. This is an avoidant infant and a preoccupied infant, but as adults, and they aren't relying on a parental figure, they're triggering off of each other. And instead of having kind of a neutral figure to come in and de-escalate and help them feel better, you had the avoidant person feeling threatened by the preoccupied person and getting more avoidant, and the opposite happening, the preoccupied person feeling more triggered and getting more preoccupied. And this just escalated both people, where one person escalates by disconnecting and one person escalates by trying to get hyper connected. And it just set off this.
Prove to me. Right?
Yeah, exactly. Prove it, but not in the sense of, I don't feel loved by you. I don't feel secure, as you don't do anything for me. You don't even care about me. You can't even do this. If you loved me, and the other person's like, you can see them shrinking as this is happening and shutting down, going, oh my God, can this just be over? And I was going, there has to be something to this. This cannot be a coincidence that these patterns exist in infants, and then this pattern of this spiral, this feedback loop exists in adults. Yeah, there has to be something to it. So what we've discovered over time, this was 8 years ago that I stumbled into this. And since I've discovered, you actually introduced me to something called emotionally focused therapy, which tackles this whole pattern and defines it very well. So the pattern involves these two sides, the preoccupied side and the avoidant side. So we kind of use different non-clinical terms, like we
Easier to understand.
Right. We call avoidant people they're more like turtles. They want to isolate, they want to go into their shell, they want to get away, and they'll lash out as a last resort to give themselves some space. And so think of them as being kind of on the blue side, the cooler side of the attachment spectrum. And then the opposite of that would be this kind of red side, this hotter side. We call them like storms because they tend to escalate and heat up, and they throw all this stormy behavior, the stormy energy at the partners.
The yelling, the screaming, the talking nonstop, right?
They machine gun them, and their partners are just kind of overwhelmed by it. They get flooded. So tell us a little bit about what are avoidant behaviors. Like, how would our listeners know, yeah, I'm probably on that blue side, that turtle side?
I think there's two things to have in mind, right? The first one is what my behavior looks like from a third person's point of view, and then also what my internal behaviors look like, right? So the internal behaviors are probably, I feel something, but I'll try to bottle it up. I will try to push it down. I won't acknowledge it. I won't go there, really. I'll just pretend that nothing's wrong. That's my internal behavior. And then my external behavior is probably, I don't talk. So what I'll do is I'll leave the room. I'll leave the conversation by just sitting there and looking at you, but I won't engage with you. Or I'll shut you down. You're over exaggerating. You're doing it again. Why you have to do this? We were having a good time.
And why do you have to start these fights? Yeah.
Right. You're always trying to fight. So they'll dismiss the other person's emotions, but they'll also dismiss their own emotions.
Yeah, that's a key point. They're not just saying your feelings are overhyped and you're making mountains out of molehills. They're going inside. They're having that same dialogue inside.
Right.
So the key factor there that Carey is pointing out is that this as an individual is something, if you are on this turtle, this blue side of the spectrum, if you're more avoidant, you've probably been doing your whole life.
Yes.
When you run into
It's
stress.
important to understand that these are coping mechanisms, right? This is what I try to do to keep myself safe. This isn't something I do on purpose and to make the other person mad. This is me trying to survive in this complicated world. So I learned early on as an avoidant that it's safer not to talk. It's safer not to feel. It's safer not to acknowledge an emotion. So I can easily stop talking. I can easily shut down. And I'll do this internally too. Even if you don't know I'm feeling bad, I know I'm feeling bad, and I won't accept that I'm feeling that way.
Yeah. And so when the avoidant partner is sitting there in our sessions, we often see they will not be looking at their partner.
Yes.
They will often even be turned away physically on the couch, facing a different direction.
Yes.
They will be rolling their eyes.
They'll also be
sighing,
protecting themselves, so they'll be crossed armed,
holding a pillow,
or throwing their head back against the wall.
Yeah, like, oh my God, can this be over already? You can see it written all over them. And so, well, as a therapist, you look at that and you see, oh, this person is experiencing emotional overwhelm. They're flooded and they're trying to cope. They're hurting. Their partner sees, I'm talking to you, I'm telling you how hurt I am, and
you don't care.
You don't care. You couldn't give two shits about what I'm feeling, and you hear that. Are you fucking kidding me? Is a really common phrase that we hear from people
all the time
towards their avoidant partners. So what about the other side? What about preoccupied people? What are their behaviors like?
So the preoccupied will do quite the opposite, right? For any emotional state they're in, whatever feeling they have, this will become so uncomfortable. Like feeling is so overwhelming. They need someone else to kind of reaffirm and calm them down. So internally, they're yelling for help, right? I'm not feeling loved. I'm scared you're going to leave me. I'm scared you're not there. So I'm terrified. But instead of terrified or pain coming out of their mouth, anger will come out of their mouth, right? So they'll say like, are you fucking kidding me? You don't even give a shit about me, right? Yeah. So they're really angry when they're really in pain. So like the avoidant, they'll also have intense emotion, but instead of trying to numb it down, trying to sweep it off under the rug, they will exacerbate it. They will get so scared by the emotion will just keep growing and growing. That's why storm is a great analogy to this behavior, because it just gets worse and worse and worse.
Yeah, like a hurricane, it kind of powers up and powers up until eventually.
And then my behaviors externally are very similar to what I'm doing internally. I'll just keep getting louder, or I'll keep getting meaner, or I'll keep getting whatever I'm getting until I get a reaction from you.
Right. And meanwhile, the other person's going, I just won't react, and I'll hope this blows over.
Yeah, right? But it doesn't, right?
It makes it worse. Yeah, both people, their instincts are totally backwards and produce the exact opposite. The person who's storming at their partner wants closeness, but that anger is pushing them away. Yeah. And that avoidant person, they want more space, but that shut down, cold, disinterested approach is causing the partner to come at them even harder. So it's a really difficult thing for people to see, and that's why the therapy is so effective, right? Is you have a third party translating, and it's often shocking to people when I'm like, okay, hold on a second here. So it sounds like you're not actually angry. Would it be fair to say that you're hurt? And they're going, of course I am. And this is a key point, is to each person, what they're dealing with inside is very obvious. They feel like it's so obvious that it doesn't even warrant communicating.
Yeah, there's no need to say it out loud.
Right. I don't need to tell you I am hurt.
Yeah.
You should know that, dumbass, right? They're like, how do you not get it? But
I open my mouth and just mean comes out, right? So I'm hurt, but mean comes out. It's strange interesting how we do that.
It is, yeah. The pain comes out as anger with preoccupied, and the pain comes out as disinterest. And then so the surface level conversation is an angry and a disinterested person. Yes. But when you come to therapy, you learn under it, it's not that. It's two people who are going through the same thing. I don't feel loved. I don't feel like you like me. I don't feel good enough for you.
They're scared. They're in pain.
Right. And so that's a lot of what we're trying to do in this process is help people with that.
Translate that.
So in a relationship, it's not like this stuff is right from the get-go, right? When you start off, things are probably smooth. So think of stress. Remember back to the strange situation experiment that Ainsworth did. Stress is what triggers these patterns. If you don't have a lot of stress, if things in your life are going pretty smoothly, you're probably not experiencing a lot of this, right? But then you have kids in the mix, or you have a job loss, or a big move, or a death in the family, anything that stresses you, it's like a volume knob. The more stress, the more people walk into our office and they're tense. They're really in the throes of this pattern.
I think, Ryan, that happens because when I get stressed is when I need most this felt sense that I'm not alone, right?
Yeah.
So because I'm so stressed because of work, family, whatever it is, the kids, and I'm kind of battling it on my own in my mind, I get so anxious about it that I lash out, right?
Right. And so each person, when you're going through this as a couple, as a team, as a unit, each person is suffering, and each person is trying to use their own coping mechanism.
Yes.
The stormy, the more red person is trying to, let's connect more, let's talk more, let's be closer. And the other person, the avoidant, the more blue or turtle side of the spectrum is going, I'm so stressed. I need more time with my friends. I need more time for my hobbies and for myself. I want to disconnect. I want to escape.
Yeah.
And so when people call us is usually in this phase, which is called the power struggle phase. It's called that because each person is kind of saying, no,
do it my way.
Do it my way. We need to connect more. And the other person's, no. You're crazy. You're bipolar.
There's
you're
no way
so emotional. I'm not doing that. And the other person is going, I'm crazy. You're a fucking narcissist. You don't care about anybody but yourself. Yeah. And they come in going, we need you to tell us who's right.
Exactly.
As if we're going to sit here and kind of go, oh, well, you are. or you are, but it's this complex interplay, right? So what do we do about that? How do we solve that with attachment-based therapy?
I think the first thing we have to do, and I would recommend anyone thinking about going to therapy or even going through a power struggle, is identify the primary issue, right? So the primary issue isn't, because I can sit in session and talk about who washed the dishes, who is taking the kids to their hockey, who is paying the bills, right? But really, that's not the problem. That's just the example. Right. The main core issue is, can I depend on you? Are you there for me? How much do you love me? Do you understand me? Am I unconditionally accepted by you, right?
Yeah.
So when you get to that fear, because that fear can translate into different words for different people, and they have different memories associated with this fear, and different hopes for this fear. So when we see that, and the other person the partner can be there for them when their loved one is facing this fear, that kind of heals. When they have a felt sense that this person is with me when I'm explaining what I'm hurt by or what I'm fearing.
So essentially, people who come in when they're in this power struggle and they're arguing about the dishes or who drives who to hockey practice, it's not getting to the core issue.
No.
So they're in the throes of this insecure attachment conflict going back and forth, and you're trying to help them cut through the crap up here and move to the deeper level issues.
Exactly.
So to tie all this together, can we use some kind of example?
Sure.
And
so
show people how exactly we would work through that?
Well, I'm going to grab an example that is probably one that people don't think can survive, right? So infidelity.
That's a good one.
Generally, when there's infidelity, we understand that infidelity is a coping mechanism that generally is done by either a withdrawal or an anxious person that just gave up, right? So I'm feeling so alone. I'm feeling so inadequate with you. I'm feeling that I'm worthless to you. And then there's come this other person that for a second, for a minute, convinces me that I'm not inadequate, that I am enough, and that I am worthwhile. And that's very tempting. That's very hard to say no to when I'm in pain. So I can think of a couple right now that I worked with, and there was an infidelity, a long one for like maybe 8-9 months. He was unfaithful to his wife. And when we discussed why that happened, it was attachment. It was, I was feeling so alone in our marriage, and I was feeling so worthless to you that it was so painful for me that I needed an out. And I chose an easy, quick fix in theory out, which just hurt me more because it only pulled me away from the person I wanted, right? So it's not a sign of I don't love you. It's a sign that I can't cope with this anymore. So I'm kind of trying to do this, right? So what we would do in session was, one, get to that so that this partner could say that out loud. Really, I did this because I felt so much pain, because I couldn't talk to you, because I didn't know how to, because I was scared to be inadequate for you.
And just to pause for one sec, because I have talked and written about this before, and I know there's a segment of people who are like raging right now going, you're defending infidelity, you're justifying infidelity. So I want to pause and clarify, Carey is not saying this is a good thing, or if you're feeling alone, just go have an affair, it'll be easy. That's not the message here. The message is explaining why infidelity happens, how it connects with, usually in my experience, the more avoidant side of the attachment spectrum.
Or the preoccupied they gave up, right?
Right, when there's the inversion. We'll get to that. But basically what she's saying is there's some kind of attachment dysfunction going on, this deep sense of I'm not good enough, I'm not okay, you're not there for me, I need to escape that pain, and so I seek this other person.
I could have chosen a different route, right? I could have chosen alcohol. I could have chosen drugs. Right. I could have chosen working out. I could have chosen counseling. I could have chosen talking to you. And that's why the infidelity is the person who was unfaithful's responsibility. They chose that route. And this isn't by no means, Ryan, justifying the infidelity or saying it's okay. It's just explaining it. So when this happens and I can see in myself how I was wounded by my attachment and then show that to my partner, and my partner have the love, this incredible love, because I admire any person who can go there with their partner and come out of that, right? And forgive that, right? So, and with this tremendous amount of love hold me in that space, I don't only know that I am loved and unconditionally accepted, I feel it. So like my gut feels it. Like I have this perception of the world, and I see myself with my partner facing the world. And that's powerful, and that's healing in and of itself. So it's really not the therapist puts the environment, makes the questions, creates safety, but really the healing is done between them. Right.
They do the work. And so in summary of that, when you have infidelity, you have this wound to the partner saying, you're not good enough. That's how the partner feels.
Of course,
right?
It's my fault. I wasn't good enough for you.
How did I mess up? Am I not pretty enough? Am I not handsome enough? Am I not whatever enough.
Rich enough, interesting enough,
and
whatever it is.
Such a big wound. And so that would trigger that attachment insecurity we're talking about, where you would start to doubt, is this safe? Is this person there for me? If they can do a betrayal like this at any time, how can I possibly ever feel secure? And in the process Carey's talking about, you go through the work and you understand why this happened, and you understand how to feel closer. You understand how to cope in new ways.
And then you experiment in session, right? You feel it in session.
And that feeling in session where you move from being more insecure in your attachment to being more secure. You feel that this person who you think doesn't care about you. That's the number one thing we hear. How could you cheat on somebody and still love them? Those two things are incompatible.
Yeah.
And so you feel like there's no way I can be safe. And as you talk and you hear more about it, in many cases, you do start to feel safe. You do see, okay, this is not because I'm not good enough. It's not because they don't care. It's not because they don't consider me. It's because of these other
their
factors.
Issues. And they have to resolve those issues.
They have to do the work.
Yeah,
right. And they have to put in the effort to overcome that. So you can move from insecure to secure. And that's the whole goal of therapy. And whether it's infidelity, whether it's a long-standing pattern of feeling like your partner doesn't hear you or take your concerns seriously, therefore they must not care about you.
Perpetual conflicts, right?
Underneath it all, the message is the same. I am not cared for. I am not safe. And that's what we're trying to work to in this type of therapy is, how did you come to the conclusion that you are not safe? What causes you to feel that? What triggers a lack of safety for you?
You know, because sometimes these words are said so easily that people don't really understand why feeling safe is so important, right? We're just talking about safety. It's not that big of an issue, right? There's been a lot of studies, Ryan, that show that PTSD is sometimes or many times even caused by being alone, right? If I was to face that accident with my loved one and we were to survive it together and I could talk about it with my loved one, that generally leads to not an aggravated PTSD, maybe just an adjustment disorder because of the accident. So really not being safe, not feeling loved is huge for a human being. It's not just something that I can blow off easily. This is like make or break life. This is like what people are here for kind of thing, right?
Yeah, and just to expand on that a little bit, we'll be doing other episodes where we talk about the impact of attachment on mental health. There are many other, just a sidebar here, there are many other mental health issues that are rooted in attachment. PTSD, for example, even with soldiers, has been shown that the soldiers who come back with the worst PTSD had pre-existing insecure attachment going over there. So attachment security helps you to be more resilient to life and to remain optimistic and feel secure. And we're talking secure emotionally. I'm safe. Things aren't going to happen to me again. I can get through it when I face adversity.
Or if they do happen, I have the capacity to overcome them, right?
I'm capable.
Yeah,
right, exactly. So for all the listeners who are really resonating with this stuff and going, yeah, that's me, but what do I do? Can you give people some advice? Like, what does a preoccupied person do? What does the red, the hotter, the more stormy partner do to help improve their relationship?
I think they have to be softer. You know, I'm going to back up. I think there's one thing that both people can do that would really help. So and I do this in my own personal life, when I get angry or when I'm very upset with my husband, I generally have to take a second and see, okay, what's hurting me? So what perception of his behavior, of what we just went through, hurt me? And I have to own that. So I'm in pain because I am thinking that he doesn't care about me because he left all the dishes for me to clean, right?
Right.
And that is my pain. So I would advise both of these people, the pursuers, the hot and the cold, to acknowledge that pain. Be able to go there and see, okay, what is hurting me? What am I fearing the most? Right? What's causing my pain? And then for the different people, there'd be different things to do with that pain. So the pursuer, or the one that's red and kind of the stormy, right? Mm-hmm. Realizes his or her pain and then goes and speaks from that pain. So instead of opening my mouth and angry, mean yelling coming out.
You didn't do the dishes.
Right? Would be like, you know, it really hurts me when I come home and I see all the dishes there, because the only thing I can think of is that you didn't even take the time to think about how tired I would have been. And that's painful to me, because I doubt how much you love me. Right. This is going to create a completely different response than, why didn't you do the dishes?
And that's not obvious to your partner, that not doing the dishes equals you don't care about me. Who cares? They're dishes. That's the response you would get with the anger, right? Is why? Because now I feel inadequate if I'm avoidant. I feel like I'm getting dumped on for something that doesn't even matter. Why are you doing this to me? And I'm going to get defensive. And then we're going to get into that spiral.
And then we'll fight for half an hour about dishes, right?
So the stormy, the preoccupied side soft startup is big. So even another technique you can use is if you know your partner has a trigger, like they feel blamed, they feel like you attack them, you can even start out by kind of tending to that and going, I'm not attacking you. I'm not trying to blame you for anything here. All I'm saying is when this happens, it makes me feel whatever.
Right. And this like
way.
Typical like startup phrase. I feel, say the emotion, when you say the action, because I think, right? So there is part of our responsibility in that, but there's also our partner's responsibility because of his behavior. So we're attending to two things at the same time.
Right. So what about the more avoidant people, the people who are less likely to talk about what bothers them or even be aware that something is bothering them?
I think that'd be the first step. What's bothering me, right? I think the
check-ins and mindfulness.
Yeah, check-ins, like check in with yourself, acknowledge that emotion is there. You know, I sometimes hear, because again, avoidance generally comes from male clients. There are females who are avoidant, but it tends to be more male.
It does.
This very rooted idea that emotions are a mess, worthless, stupid. We'd be better off without them, right?
Right. If we could all just be these kind of logic robots.
Yeah. What's what's their purpose? And I think it's very important that we understand that emotions are hardwired into our human self.
You can't not have them.
Because we wouldn't survive without them, right? If we wouldn't get scared, we'd cross the street anytime we wanted. If we wouldn't get hungry, we wouldn't eat. If we wouldn't get lonely and we wouldn't love, we wouldn't procreate. Like emotions are indispensable for survival.
Absolutely.
So I think I would recommend those withdrawals to first check into that. Like emotions are here and they're here to stay, and I am better off and will be happier if I deal with them.
Yeah.
I need them.
And so at first, one of the best ways I've found as somebody who can tend to be more avoidant is when I feel defensive and I feel like this natural urge, I experience it as I want to battle the person. I may not even be considering, is their point valid? I feel attacked. I got to defend myself. It's very fast. It's almost without even being aware of it happening.
I'm on the avoidant side, and I just leave. I'm like, oh, I'm going to go.
See ya.
It's done. Right.
And so now I have trained myself over many years to, when I feel that defensiveness, to try to go, okay, well, wait a minute here. Am I being defensive for the sake of being defensive because I have difficulty hearing somebody's complaints and feeling inadequate myself? Or am I getting defensive because someone's actually being a dick to me for no reason? And the vast majority of the time I'm going, okay, well, I know I should have done that, and I feel stupid now, and I don't want to feel that. That's why I'm getting defensive. And so I can go, then that opens me up a little and go, okay, you know what? You're right. I should have done that. And that's tough at first because as an avoidant person, if you validate your partner's complaint, it can feel like that's going to amp them up. They're going to go, I knew it. Yeah, you are the bad guy. You even admit it.
Yeah,
you
scary.
do suck. But that's not what happens.
No.
It's the total opposite. They go, okay, well, thank you.
Thanks.
Was that so hard? And over time, you learn that produces what you just want it to be over quick, then turn towards your partner, acknowledge them, give them some positive feedback. So that's the advice for each individual. Now let's talk about what can you do as a couple to avoid this pattern kicking off and getting into those really bad fights.
Well, I think we kind of just mentioned what you just mentioned, Ryan, would help a lot, right? If the avoidant can take ownership of part of the behavior. So yeah, I didn't do the dishes, or yeah, I did come home late, or yeah, I didn't go visit your parents, right? To own some of the behavior that could have caused the pain would really help. Or take responsibility for the way it was said or how I handle it, right? So then the red one, the pursuer, will feel acknowledged. Okay, I'm not crazy. I'm not just making this up. You are seeing that there is a problem. You are taking responsibility for some of it, right? So then that person could become softer. And when he or she becomes softer, then you can have a real dialogue about what's going on, right?
Yeah, and part of this is not only being aware of your own triggers. So if you're a stormy person, being aware of when you're heating up and asking yourself what's going on, like Carey was talking about, and then speaking to the pain, or how I was talking about if you're avoiding, you feel yourself shutting down. That's kind of what I would call part one. Part two is, let's assume you failed to do that. The stormy person fails to do that and escalates. As the avoidant person, you now have two choices. You can bite into that, shut down and create the pattern, or you can fight against your instinct to do that and say, look, I'm feeling really attacked right now. I feel like you're coming in hot at me, and I'm not going to respond well to it.
Yeah.
Can you
lower your voice?
Talk to it in a different way? Can you change your tone? And that check-in is really helpful. Or the opposite, the preoccupied person, if they find their partner shutting down, can
notice that they're shutting down. Oh, I can see you're shutting down. Okay, maybe I just need to calm down.
Yeah.
Cool off and
Is
do
this a good
again.
time to talk? Or often, like, again, they see that shutting down is not caring, but after therapy or after even just focusing on this a lot, but probably therapy, you'll notice, okay, my partner's in pain. He's shutting down or she's shutting down. So I should maybe ask them if they're okay rather than going, do you even care about me? Like, I see that you don't really seem focused and this is really bothering me. Like, are you okay? Is this a good time to talk? Maybe they say no. Yeah. It's not. And then okay, my partner's not going to they're not going to give me what I want.
No, I would just say that 90% or 95% of the times we're angry, we're hurt.
Yeah. Yeah, anger is like a mask of presentation.
Yeah, it's camouflage, right? So I think the best step for any of us, including myself, is that when we see someone angry, we generally behind that anger can find someone in pain. And when we see that person in pain, we can be compassionate and we can be loving and we can be nurturing, which is what that person needs. It's just going to bring us together.
Yeah, that instinct to turn towards rather than turn away.
Turn away.
Yeah, it's tough. So we're going to wrap up with some common questions and misconceptions. So the first, can people be a bit of both?
Yes. I think we tend to be one. Like I mentioned, like predominantly I'm an avoidant. I will try to stay away from fights at all costs. But I can definitely be preoccupied when it's something that I really care about or want it to be fixed right away.
Yeah, I need this now.
I need this now and from you now. Right?
Yeah. So yeah, you can be a bit of both. I think most people are.
We tend to gravitate towards one, but we can definitely be the both.
Sure. And you can invert. So a common example of this would be, I've heard some of my guy friends say, I feel like the girl in this relationship. Yeah. And without realizing it, they're directly speaking to attachment, is they are with a woman who is probably more avoidant than they are. Cool. And so for the first time, they have more emotional need than their partner, and they're now in the pursuer role of, I want more from you, rather than you're asking too much of me.
Or the opposite, right? A female that have been very pursuer, and she pursues and she pursues and she pursues and she storms and she storms, and then I'm sick of it. I'm done. Right. I'm not going to do this anymore, right?
And then you have what's called an attachment inversion, where maybe the wife has been saying, let's go to therapy for 5 years, and eventually she goes, you know what, I'm out, here's the separation papers, and she's checked out and she's super avoidant now. And then the male who has been avoidant to this point is all of a sudden panicking and has that stress trigger. That's a major stress event. So that activates, like we talked about, it turns up the volume and goes, oh my God, I'm in danger, I'm going to lose my wife, my family,
my home,
everything. And so then they become preoccupied going, how do I fix this? I want to do therapy 5 times a week, and they come in with so much intensity, and that's so off-putting to their partner, because their partner one is going, where was this for a whole relationship?
It's a little too late, right? It's too late. You should have done this before.
And so there can be an inversion as well. You can change your attachment over time.
And that's also great news, right? Because if we continue attachment, we can go from insecure attachment to secure attachment.
Yes. Right? The other common question that I often receive is, what if 2 people of the same attachment get together? What if 2 avoidants get together? And if you think of it kind of like a magnet, if you put 2 poles together, one magnet's going to be stronger, the other one's going to flip around. So if you have 2 avoidant people, the less avoidant person will play the preoccupied role. So they may come in and you'll have a lot of distance. And this would usually be people who come in and say, well, we never argue, or we never fight, or we feel like roommates.
You can do the silent treatment for days.
Yeah, they don't talk. I had one client who would physically leave the country and go to a vacation home because he's like, nope. And he wouldn't. Done. Yep. Yeah. And his wife would just send him a text after a few weeks, are you alive? Right? Because they're that avoidant. They don't want to talk about it. They just shut right down. So if you have any questions or comments that you'd like answered about attachment or about these types of conflicts, ryananswers.com/podcast. You can find the show notes. If you enjoyed our talk between Carey and I today, please rate our show, subscribe. We have a lot of episodes coming out. We do an episode every week. We talk about all things psychology and relationships related. That's everything for today, guys. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you for listening.